down, everyone. Sit down.
Yeah, right. Make yourself comfortable.
Sit down.
Where is our lovely Steph?
Oh, I did.
There we go. Can we have a massive round of applause for Steph Dickens, who's the lead archivist at Bishopsgate Institute?
Hi everyone, welcome to Bishopsgate Institute. Dan did give me a costume, but I'm not wearing it. No, I look like an inflated Liberace, I'm not wearing it. It's terrible. But all I'm going to say is to welcome you all here tonight. It's absolutely amazing to have everyone here and to celebrate the launch of the Queer Tools of London Archive. Just to think, about an hour ago this was a library. I know, lots of women in the library. Lots of people working quietly, not anymore. And who's packing up? We'll find out. But no, it's an incredible archive. We're so pleased to have it. And the one thing we love is we never know what's going to come in next into the archive. So far we've had large bits of wooden cake, Richard Branson's head. It's amazing. It's amazing. So thank you, Dan, and all of you involved in Queer Tools of London for depositing it with us. It'll be celebrated, loved, and while you're all here, make sure you all give us your archives as well, because no one else is going to put us all in archives. We've got to do it ourselves. So make sure you do, and I'll put them in a box very comfortably. And you'll be here forever. How weird is that? Anyway, I'm going to shut up because there's far more interesting things planned. Suffice to say, if there is any nudity, Dan,
In 5 minutes.
it's between us. Dan does hold the record for being the only man who's bare bottom in our researchers
The only
area.
one, or the night's young?
Well, yeah. That's it. And there's still plenty of time. But enjoy yourselves, have fun. Just make it not a library. Enjoy.
Yeah.
All the best. Have a good one.
You're going to meet all the queer tour guides and find out what all of these things all over the walls and on the tables are about, and about what we're about, and what we do, and where we're from, and where we want to go, and how we can all work together on it. We're going to have a quiz from our very special Nell. We're going to have comedy from Dan, and then we're going to have split into 2 or 3 and do a tour around the room, so we get to know where all these props and placards and magazines and notes and scribbles and banners and bunting, what actions they were from, just to give a little idea of what's here in the room. Queer Tours, and Dan always reminds me of this, isn't just tours. It's events, it's protests, it's artistic interventions, it's solidarity actions, it's workshops, exhibitions. So just to give an example of what we have in the room, this, how dare you presume that we're straight, was from the Bang Bus. So we don't just do walk-in tours, but bus tours, and we're planning to do the Bang Boat, on a boat on the Thames. Partly because the idea for the Bang Bus came from the fact that one of the things we try and do is be fully accessible, and Bishopsgate is a fully accessible place. So we wanted to do a tour on a bus, and the first tour that we did was around queer spaces, and started off in, we wanted to do one venue per decade since partial decriminalisation in 1967, with legendary slogans from our friends such as the Gay Liberation Front, who are here tonight. So that was, we're going to hear more about the Gay Liberation Front. In fact, I won't stop talking about the Gay Liberation Front. That was one of the banners from the Bang Bus, the first one. We did one around HIV and AIDS later. That Fuck Your Inaccessible Venue is from the Queer Disability Tour that we did, because there's no fully accessible queer spaces in the whole of central London. So we went down Old Compton Street and asked/provoked all the queer spaces, well, what are they doing? We had some other legendary ones, such as Josh's one, what did it say? I want to fuck in your toilets if only I can get in. Here we've got a placard of the Sexual Offences Act 1967. I'm not going to talk too much more about that, but of course one of the things we do is hook everything on history. And one of the cheesy mantras that we do is harnessing history or herstory as a propeller for action today. Here we've got everything fun happens after midnight. So where Queer Tours began was in, hands up who's been to the Joiners Arms, or we went to the Joiners Arms in Hackney Road. So it actually, it started in a conversation in the Smokers' Corner of the Joiners Arms when 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago, we were all busy fighting the slaughter of London's queer spaces. Of course, we've lost a third of them in the last 5 years. And we were wondering what to do. We were so busy firefighting the Black Cap, the RBT at the time, the Georgian Dragon, Madame Jojo's, and we were wondering what we were going to do. And we wanted to do something more proactive and empowering than just firefight all the time. So that's where the ideas of Queer Tours of London came from. So that's thanks to the Joiners Arms, and the campaign is still very much alive. Get involved in the Friends of the Joiners Arms. Then we've got, you'll see dotted around Holly's amazing photos all throughout the room. Here we've got the children, and Sarah on deck tonight. Here we've got an event that we did around Section 28 called We Have Rather Been Invaded, which I won't give that away because that's coming in the quiz. Here we've got speaking to the manager of the Admiral Duncan on the Disability Justice Tour. Again, the disability placards. Here's one of my favourites. Westminster Council don't take the piss. So that's for every action and tour that we do, there's always like 5 behind the scenes that never happen because we didn't have time, or it's in the reserve bank. And we're still planning to do a big queer orgy in the toilets of Broadwick Street. Because of gentrification and hyper-capitalism and blah, 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 they're planning to close that down. And in collaboration with the Soho Society, we wanted to do an action to highlight, well, who's London for? You've got the Ivy next to the toilets, they're trying to close it down. You've got all the luxury flats being built. And it's still there, the toilets, obviously a legendary cruising ground as well, where we take people on our tours. So that's one of the placards from the initial protest we did there. And again, the Gay Liberation Front, we are the people your parents warned you about, all power to the people, which is a slogan from the Gay Liberation Front. A round of applause for the Gay Liberation Front as well. And then we've got bunting from, what does that actually say? Let's Go Outside, which was, we've now done 2 George Michael tribute parties in Hampstead Heath, where the legendary George Michael used to have a lot of fun, because it's not just the streets that we reclaim, but it's the woods as well, and anywhere really you can get a clubby mix on. And we had a wicked party 2 years ago. It started another one last year, and it's going to be again on June the 1st. So that's just a kind of example of what's in the room. Then I wanted to pay tribute again to Bishopsgate Institute. It really is an amazing place. Hands up, who knows this place? No worries if you don't. Always reminds us that it wasn't riots, it was uprisings, because riots give the impression that it was just reactionary and on the back foot, but actually it was strategic. But the establishment don't want to realise that marginalised groups can strategise, because then we will change the status quo. And then, obviously Marsha P. Johnson, Sylvia Riviera, all of Joe Wharton, the list goes on of like incredible queers who've made us. And then here's my timeline. I'm going to keep to my promises, Steph, and flash everyone. Oh no! I've just got a tat. And this is also explains why I'm like hobbling about.
That's the reason.
Liverpool Street toilets, also handy. Bishopsgate, right opposite Liverpool Street toilets. This tag is have you not seen it yet? Yes. A tribute to. Can you see that?
Yeah.
It goes funny. It's my slag tag. It's a tribute to an amazing guy called Wilhelm Arondius. Has anyone heard of him?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's on your butt.
That's my little pony I've got on my butt. That's why I'm alive. That's another story. Wilhelm Arondius was killed in 1942 by the Nazis. He was one of the most iconic queer anti-fascist fighters, and he blew up a records office that he knew the Nazis were going to go into and find loads of people's addresses. So he blew it up and therefore probably saved thousands of lives. And when he was executed, just before that he said, "Let it be known that homosexuals are not cowards." And if there's one thing that Queer Tours is about, is bringing strength and power and respect and truth to who we are and who made us happen. So that's who's that about. And then before we invite all the legendary queer tour guides / activists to the stage to talk about what their favourite queer tour moment and what queer tours mean to them, I just wanted to geek out. Because we never really get to do that on the tours because it's so rushed. I want to geek out, because we're in a library, a bit about the radical philosophies. We've all got our own ones and we all bring our own thing to queer tours. Whether that's just to explain a bit more, we've got the template tours that we do, like Soho, like Hackney, like Brixton. We've got the special commission tours, like I remember when Danny and me did one in Wapping. Who was that? Commissioned by Lash. And at first you could think, well, what's Wapping got to do with queer history? And when we come here, do the research, go through the archives and bring out the knowledge. And I particularly love the commission tours because every street of London has a queer history, every building has a queer history. It's just because of Section 28, homophobia, etc., we've never been allowed to find out. And in 1986, there's a lesbian and gay support the print workers strike. Well, a strike which the lesbian and gay support the print workers supported against the homophobic news of the world, as well as lots of incredible molly houses in Wapping. So we've got the special commission, and then we've got the special events like the Polari workshops, the George Michael parties, etc. But just a bit more about, for me, and I welcome everyone to talk about what is the specific inspiration for them. As we'll find out more tonight, Gay Liberation Front was born out of Black Power movements and connected with the Women's Liberation Front. So one of the mantras that we use is all injustices are connected. And a particular icon of mine, who I don't think was queer but would be if they were here tonight, was Paolo Zeriali, founding father of popular education. And for me, popular education and theatre of the oppressed is some of the methodologies which we never talk about on the tours because it can sound boring. Obviously, we're too busy doing cruising walks and Polari exercises. Woo!
So I think Dan's invited me to the stage to talk about one of my favourite experiences of queer tours. Is that right? Yeah, cute. Good. I'm doing well. So I wanted to talk and kick off about, it wasn't a tour that we did, it was an event that we did called Auntie Sharon. It was in the summer of 2017. Who was there from Auntie Sharon? Just a couple of people. So it was part of the National Trust Pride and Prejudice season, which some of you might remember they got a lot of flack for the time. National Trust doing something about gays? How terrible. But it was a fantastic night. And it was also about marking 30 years of Section 28. I was talking about Hannah Has Two Dads. Does people remember that book? Anybody read it? Put your hand up. Hannah Has Two Dads. I was lucky enough to be brought up with that book, so yay, my mum and dad. So this night was about gay shame, about collective LGBT trauma, about the fact that even those of us who maybe are feeling very proud and are completely out, and that's never been an issue, that we still have this history, we still have this collective memory of trauma, of pain, of shame, of having to cover our tracks, hide who we are in one way or another. And the event was about, not a pity party, but about sharing some of those experiences and looking to the future and looking to release some of that shame, release some of that pain. And it was a bit of a ceremony, as it always is, a bit of a ritual. So we collected water from the Thames, and obviously we're Queer Tours of London, so the Thames plays a huge part in everything we talk about, and also some stones from the Thames. And we had two bowls, one of the stones, one with the water. And we asked people to come up and share their stories. And they could be sad stories, stories of pain, stories of shame, stories that they wanted to release and let go of and move forward. Or they might want to be stories of today or the future, what they were looking forward to in terms of queer culture. And yes, people shared some heartbreaking stories. People shared stories around police brutality, around rejection from families, rejection from their own communities for not being queer enough or being too femme, or all of those other stories that we know. However, there were also some really amazing, uplifting, joyful, celebratory conversations with people who said things like, I'm not out to everybody, but just being in this space makes me want to go home. I'm going to tell my uncle tonight. And that was an amazing moment. And another one was a woman who shared a story with us who said, she said that she'd found out that one of her parents was gay by finding some communications on a computer and had to tell the other parent, and how hard that was, and how it threatened their whole family unit, and how even though she was LGBT herself, it gave real conflict to what it meant to be gay and what impact it would have on her family.
I'm a bit pissed tonight. I'll tell you what, I've just been to a carnation for a song at the Young Vic. If you have a chance, running till Saturday. Running till Saturday. As you see, I'm a very young person, but I went out of curiosity to watch this show at the Young Vic, and it's people in their 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, wherever they're going, doing a musical about their lives and their experiences. That's now at the Young Vic. And there's a magnificent song in it about the gateways. Now, nobody here will know what the gateways was. Nettie. You went once. The Gateways was the best-known lesbian club in London. And 5 women who went there in the old days, tonight until Saturday, sing a song about the girls from the Gateways. And they end their song by suddenly, all of them in a line, saying, "And here we still are." That's one. The other one is Danny, here last week, was doing a show at the Arcola, which was about the 50 years since the Stonewall Uprising, a dance, song, film, talk show. All of them, all the media. And I was just sitting there in the audience night after night, watching the transfixed faces. So that's just 2 shows in the same fortnight telling our stories. So queer tours are still stories. Who knows what a Tom Molly was? A Tommy was also a word for a period. So when as we would put it, gay or bisexual man went in the 18th century to a private house to pretend to be female and dress up and do female things like getting married as a bride or giving birth.
To Jesus.
To Jesus.
No, to cheeses.
Sorry. To Jesus. I must have misheard in church all those years ago. When they referred to their wives, in fact, it was ultimately abusive. What they were talking about was the human beings who have periods in the most abusive possible way. Now, all of this is the kind of thing any of us can hear about on the queer tour of London. And I think to most of us, it's going to be a surprise. And that's the purpose of the queer tours of London, to get one hell of a surprise. And I don't only refer to stripping half naked and exposing the latest tattoos. Most of us don't. I have the most beautiful parts, but no tattoos. So you're spared all that. What is my favourite memory of doing a queer tour, thanks to the initiative of many, but Dan here? What is my favourite memory? Well, I was wondering about that, and I thought, well, there was a tour in Marylebone. It was one of the ones where we were commissioned by the Holt Educational Enterprise, and we were asked, will you do a tour of Marylebone? And we'd never done one, so what's to say about Marylebone? So Danny here and I did that tour, and it was wonderful. So we had to find out, as we've already heard, it doesn't matter where you go in London, there's queer stories. So there was no difficulty about finding wonderful things. Now, the one I remember best is this one. We walked down a street called Balcombe Street, not far off Baker Street, and we stopped outside an ordinary door to what is now an immensely expensive residential area, an ordinary door. And we explained that in this building, 2 guys had a flat and had died only a few months before. And they had been together over 50 years. And their names were Roger and Percy. And when they met, they were criminals. To find somewhere to live together was difficult. They were a permanent risk from the police for one reason or another. One was an actor, the other was a teacher. And they spent their last 25 or so years living in this flat in a house in Balcombe Street. So there are Danny and I standing outside the house describing how they lived long enough to be 2 of the very earliest people to get a civil partnership and 2 of the very earliest people to get married. And they only got married because they hadn't heard about all that. They only got married because the Marylebone Town Hall contacted them and said, do you know you can now get married? You did a civil partnership with us. We'll give you free champagne for all your friends if you'll come and get married. So, well, all right. So they went and got married.
With Tour of London, we talk also about a new community with mass. What's the situation about South Asians who are LGBT in London, and especially people from Bangladesh?
Yes, so I'm Mas. I work for a queer tour of London as a tour guide. So I lead the Whitechapel tour, especially for the South Asian community, and it's focusing on the Bangladeshi people, because here are few Bangladeshi LGBT community. They basically claim themselves that they are working for Bangladeshi LGBT community, but they don't have any idea basically how the Bangladeshi LGBT community formed and what is the real history of Bangladesh. So I thought, why don't we especially curate a tour for Bangladeshi community? That's why we have do this Whitechapel tour for the South Asian community to let them know real history of Bangladesh, LGBT history of Bangladesh, how it developed and what is the current situation, and how we can also create a platform for the British-born Bangladeshi LGBT community.
How old is this community in London?
The people here in London have been living from 60, 70 years, 100 of years, but still their homophobia is there. So though they are living in London, but their mindset is not changed. They still have this hatred for homosexual people, for the LGBT community people. So we need to work on that to bring a positive change in the British-born Bangladeshi LGBT community. And I'm trying to do that. There are few organizations, groups like Adbud and Apongor. They are trying to create a small platform for the Bangladeshi LGBT people, and I'm trying to work with them, make a tie-in between other groups, so we create a platform and we work for the British-born Bangladeshi LGBT community to make a positive change, to change their mindset up.
TED, Gay Liberation Front, you are one of the organizers of the first Pride in London in the 70s. Let's talk about the history, LGBT history of London, especially about the different communities.
Yep. I was actually involved in the first march organised by Gay Liberation Front back in 1971, which was the youth group march, which went from Hyde Park along Oxford Street, down Haymarket to Trafalgar Square, and it was protesting against the imbalance in age allowance of the Sexual Offences Act. You could have sex if you were 18, if you were heterosexual, but for gay people, gay men, you had to be over 21 and it had to be in private, which meant that if you were in a building with other people in the building, if you had sex in a room, you could still be arrested. And the very first march in London by LGBTI people was held by the youth group, organised by the Gay Liberation Front in 1971, and that was before the very first Pride March.
And about the life of communities, life of LGBT people in the minorities.
Well, the life for the majority of gay people was having to keep it a secret because the police regarded being gay as being a crime, the psychiatrists regarded it as being a mental illness, and society regarded it as being a perversion. So most gay people had to keep their sex lives secret, and they could only be themselves when they were with other gay people. Being with other gay people often meant going to a gay club which was being exploited by criminals who made you pay extra for your drinks, who treated you pretty badly because they knew that theirs was the only place that you could go to.
And for black people it was a double discrimination.
Oh yes, yeah. There was a double discrimination. I remember when I came out to my mother was very accepting about my being gay, but she did say she knew that I was going to have to face hostility as a gay man as well as racism, and she was very upset about that.
Of my comedy, I want to learn more, but there's only 5 of you in here, so I'm not doing any more, and I'm not being paid for it neither, so there we go. Stop it. To be serious for a moment, I am one of the queer tours of London. What are we, a troupe, a posse, a gang? A circus? Okay, we're a circus, right? And I'm one of them, and I do the queer tours of Hackney with Nell, of Theatreland with Danny, and of Soho by myself. That's the best one. Only joking. And I do want to tell you a serious story though, which is one of the stops on my tour is of the White Horse Pub, right? Which is opposite the Gielgud Theatre. What's the name of that street? Not quite Charing Cross Road, but you know where it is. There's a Gielgud Theatre, and opposite the Gielgud Theatre is a pub called the White Horse. Now that's just a normal pub, but in the 1920s that became a gay pub. It became I need to verb, that's going to be embarrassing, isn't it? Oh no, it didn't come out. There we go. It became a gay pub, and it became a gay pub quite by accident. The gay men in the 1920s went to the White Horse because they knew that if they went to the White Horse en masse, they would be safe. Because all of the other clientele would be gay men just like them, and they wouldn't get beaten up, and they might pull in the toilets, and they might not even have to speak in Polari because they'd be able to be amongst their own community. Now there was one geezer that wasn't very happy with this, and that was the landlord of the White Horse. He didn't want his pub polluted with this bunch of benders, and so he did what any respectable landlord should do, and he installed a doorman, a bouncer, outside the White Horse. And it was this bouncer's job to make sure that no gays entered the White Horse pub. The only problem was, this bouncer didn't know what a gay looked like. And he had no fucking idea who was meant to be allowed in and who wasn't. And so any man who arrived at the White Horse pub, who had their hair done in a particular way, or had a nice suit on, had a nice tie on, walked in a particular manner, they weren't allowed in. Sorry pal, this pub's for straights only. And so what happened next was the takings for the pub plummeted. No one went in anymore. And so the landlord had a choice. Do I run a ghost town pub, Or do I allow the benders in? What happened next? Benders were allowed in! The power of the pink pound or shilling or whatever they used in the 1920s. Where's Andrew Lumsden? Only teasing, Andrew, only teasing. But by then, of course, the White Horse had become a pub that wasn't cool anymore. The gays had found somewhere else to go to, and that was the end of that. So next time you pass the White Horse pub, that's the history of that pub. And I tell that story in my tours of Soho, and I think, what a fun and interesting story. But then I had somebody on my tour from Cairo, and he said, that might be your past, but it's my present.
Yeah.
And that's something for us to always remember, that the journey that we have gone on in this country is the journey that is still happening throughout the world, especially in countries which this country invaded during the 19th century.
Alexandra Molano, a British activist of Colombian origin. Let's talk about the reality now of LGBT people in the Latino communities in London, but also about what's happening in Latin America. We have now a new shift to the right, sometimes to the far right, so maybe some LGBT rights conquered in the recent decades could be in danger.
Oh, absolutely. I'll take this. In many countries in South America, whilst, for example, in Colombia, it has very kind of progressive legislation. It has accepted lesbian parentage. It has accepted lesbian marriages, for example. It's also accepted polygamy as a marriage institution. It can happen, right? But irregardless, gender violence and misogyny are so prevalent in South America that the rights of women, straight, bi or lesbian, are very much denigrated. And then on top of that, the rights of transgender people are also denigrated. Whilst Brazil may have a very vibrant and open transgender community, they are still the most persecuted and the most violently oppressed community in South America. So even some progressions that have happened over the past 50 years in the continent are currently being repealed. Our rights for abortion, our rights as women. You had a 12-year-old girl who was raped by her grandfather, who was forced to not have an abortion, for example. So this is the situation we are living in now in the continent. I speak as a first-generation immigrant in the UK.
What's the fallout of the situation for the Latino community in London?
Well, I don't know much about the fallout. I think there is definitely an intergenerational division. Sometimes even within my own peer group, my own generation, there can be difference of opinion. But, for example, there are movements that are, current and raw, that are reacting to the current wave of new right in this country and in South America. We are an ex-colonized country, continent, and we understand very well where these oppressions have rooted from. If we look back at our roots and understand the varied, multiple identities of sexuality that our ancestors had, we know that this binary idea of what is heterosexuality and what is quote-unquote normal has been foisted upon us by the missionaries and by the colonizers. So we have, and those of us who can, look back and we look at now and we look at where we can support the groups that need supporting. I wanted to talk about the importance of queer tours of London for people like me who are first generation, second, third generation immigrants to this country. We are still fighting on many of the fights that have already been won by the movement in this country. We're still fighting for recognition within our own culture. We're still fighting for recognition within our own families. And they're bringing with them the prejudices that they were they had absorbed from many years of colonialism, you know. So we're still on the forefront of that fight. And when you come across a movement like Queer Tours of London that are just like reveling and celebrating the history of LGBT here and the fights that have gone on, it gives us courage and it gives us empowerment.
I'm Danny. I'm a queer tour guide. I've been doing tours since that tour of Wapping that we did 2 years ago now. Yeah, it was freezing. It was absolutely freezing. It was horrible. I just wanted to share one of my favourite memories of doing a tour, because we talked a lot about history and the present and everything like that, but we haven't really talked much tonight about the future, or the youth or the young people, except to say that shit's going on in schools and stuff. But actually there's a lot of really positive things happening within young LGBT plus communities as well. And one fantastic project that I'm connected with in a number of different ways is called Project Indigo. They're based in Hackney, and it's a youth group for LGBT plus young people, primarily disabled young people. And they're powerful as anything, they're incredible. And they commissioned me and Dan, to do a tour for them, just of the local area around Hackney, like Homerton Hackney, where they're based. And it was amazing. They're so fierce. Like I was sort of thinking about when I was young, and I saw all these like shy little gabies, but they were like out and proud and rocket. They were great, weren't they? But my favourite part was when we taught them about the hanky code, because they didn't know about the hanky code because they don't really use it anymore. So we were in that little park just next to the big church up at the top of Hackney Central, you know what I mean? And I had all these hankies like just stuffed down the back of my trousers, and I was just like strutting around like this, like, what does that one mean? What did that one mean? And they loved it, and then they were like, can I have that one? Can I have the red one? Can I have the stripy one? Can I have this one? And they were all like, well into all these hilarious broadcasting of their favourite sexual preferences. And they were like, you know, these are like children, these young people, sort of teenagers, and they're just so proud and fierce and powerful. And that was a real wonderful example for me of how that history is living. Someone said that it's living history, and it's like, it's not just like living in the present, it's living for the future. And they kept those hankies, so you know, who knows what's gonna happen with them now. But that was just such a wonderful, powerful moment, and I really hope we can do more stuff with them and more youth work. That's something I want to see Queer Tours doing more of, is more youth work. So I just wanted to share that. Thanks.